Seattle versus Portland. For people wanting to make a move to the Pacific Northwest, they often weigh these two areas. In this video, we're going to dive into all the aspects that make up these cities so you can decide what your preference would be.
If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I love helping you guys out. Those of you that reach out to me here from YouTube, when you're making the move over to the Seattle area, I am an active real estate agent over here. So if you're coming over here looking to purchase a home, feel free to reach out. Happy to help you with that relocation process.
So let's start by talking about the cost of living. Now we're going to talk about really two of the biggest categories. When it comes to the smaller things like utilities and gas prices and grocery prices and healthcare costs, it's all pretty similar between Portland and Seattle. So we're really going to talk about first the housing prices. Of course, this is the big one that factors into what the actual cost of living is when you're moving to an area. The median home price in Seattle right now is $850,000, while Portland is just over $522,000. Now, when we look at the metropolitan areas as a whole, Seattle metropolitan, it's about $705,000 for the median price point. And Portland Metro is about $512,000. So those metro areas are a bit closer in those median price points, of course, because Seattle is a bit more expensive and there's a lot more affordable suburbs surrounding Seattle. Now let's look at taxes. Taxes is another big category that we really want to consider. Now, the plus side of being in Seattle, in Washington State, is there's no state income tax. Huge plus there. As opposed to Oregon, when you're in Portland, you are gonna have a state income tax. This could be as high as 9.9%. It's on a bit of a graduating scale, so the more money you make, the higher your income tax is gonna be. But a recent study by CNBC took a $75,000 annual salary and figured out which states are gonna pay the highest in that state income tax. And Oregon actually came in number one, the highest in the United States for total income taxes. For a $75,000 salary, they would pay about $6,000 in state income taxes. Now, the flip side of that is sales tax. We're gonna kind of reverse this a little bit. Portland has no sales tax, so that's a huge bonus. Versus Seattle does have a sales tax. It's gonna be whether you're in the city of Seattle or you're in one of the metro suburbs outside of Seattle, it's gonna be anywhere from 9 to 10.5% for that sales tax. Now, when we're looking at these costs, these expenses, it's also important to consider what the income is in these areas, because it's not necessarily comparing apples to apples. If they're both having the same median household incomes, then great. Portland would be cheaper. But as we look at the incomes, the median household income in Portland is just over $78,000 a year, whereas Seattle is over $105,000 a year. So yes, real estate is more expensive in Seattle, but on average, you're gonna be making about $27,000 more a year because we do have such a robust job market here in Seattle, which we're gonna talk about a little bit later here on this video. Now, the Portland metropolitan area has about a 2.5 million population, where the Seattle metro area has just over 4 million in population. In terms of the actual cities, the city of Portland has a population of about 619,000, where Seattle is about 733,000. So you can see the cities are actually a little bit closer in size than you might think when it comes to the actual population. Whereas the metro areas, Seattle Metro is a little bit bigger. There's more suburbs in the Seattle metropolitan area, so you may have more options to choose from when you're moving to the Seattle area. Now let's look at the different types of living. So suburban living, that's, number one most common. When people are moving to these areas, they're often looking in the suburbs, not necessarily right in downtown Portland or right in downtown Seattle. A lot of times you guys want to be in the suburbs. So the great thing about both these locations is you're going to have suburbs all around these main cities. So whether you want to be within 10 to 15 minutes of the downtown areas and be in a bit of a suburb, or you want to be an hour, hour and a half outside of these downtown areas and still be in a suburb, you're going to have options in both of these locations. Now, along with that, you're going to have a wide variety of the types of homes you can find. You can find new construction in these suburbs outside of both Seattle and Portland. So if you want a brand new home on a smaller lot or a larger lot, doesn't matter, there's options for both. You can find a lot of new construction in both these areas. You can also find homes as old as the early 1900s, early craftsman or colonial style homes with tons of character on the outside. You can find this in both areas and everything in between, 70s, 80s, 90s, all sorts of types of homes and architecture and types of neighborhoods, gated communities, non-gated communities, HOAs, no HOAs, all that kind of stuff you can find in both metropolitan areas. If say you're looking for luxury options, maybe you've got the budget where you want a luxury home, multi-million-dollar home in a really nice neighborhood, maybe a large home, 3,000 to 5,000 square feet, maybe it's got a water view, or it's just brand new in one of the more expensive areas. Again, both areas are gonna have options. Seattle area, whether it's the city of Seattle or the outlying suburbs like the east side, when we talk about Bellevue and Kirkland and Redmond, these cities, Seattle area is gonna have a bit more options when it comes to luxury living. Seattle really has kind of a luxury area, a more expensive area that Portland area may not quite have, and that's Bellevue. You've probably heard of Bellevue. This is where Microsoft headquarters is. This is where some of the richest people in the world live, like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos. There's a lot of money in this Bellevue area and the immediate suburbs like Kirkland and Redmond and Woodinville and Issaquah and Sammamish, those east side cities. There's a ton of money in those areas, so there's a lot of luxury homes. If we just check the current market right now, as of today, what's on the market, if you look at homes that are $2 million or more, in Portland, there's currently 162 of them on the market, and in the Seattle area, there's currently 399 of them on the market. Keep in mind, metro areas, not just the city of Portland and city of Seattle, these are the metro areas as a whole. If we look at $5 million homes or more, there's 18 in the Portland area currently on the market, and there's 68 in the Seattle area currently on the market. So if this is something that's really important to you, you have the budget for it, you're looking for a luxury home, you want to be in a super nice neighborhood, you will have more options in the Seattle area than you would Portland. And then let's just look at the urban locations here. You know, if a lot of people that are researching Seattle and Portland, they often want to live downtown. They want to live that urban lifestyle. And in both locations, you certainly can do that. Seattle is probably going to have a bit more when it comes to those high-rise condo buildings, even though Seattle is kind of lacking in that department compared to some other big cities. But I know Portland is similar. There are some options. There's not a ton of say like New York City or Los Angeles, where there's high-rise condos absolutely everywhere. A lot of them in Portland and Seattle are going to be apartment buildings rather than condos. The difference being apartments you rent, condos you own. But there are going to be options. Seattle is going to have a number of kind of high-rise building condo options in those immediate neighborhoods in downtown or just surrounding downtown, those super walkable areas, and Portland is going to have some options as well. Now, if you're not familiar with Portland or Seattle, you will notice when you get to these locations, we have issues in these downtown areas with, say, homelessness issues in tent cities, graffiti everywhere in some areas, public drug use. These are issues in both Portland and Seattle. So that's something to keep in mind. Not every neighborhood is going to be bad. Some neighborhoods are better than others. So it's important when you're moving to this area, you do your research on these different neighborhoods, both in Seattle and in Portland, and figure out which one might fit best for your lifestyle. Now, the plus side of being in the Seattle area, if you want an urban feel in an urban location, you want to live in a high-rise building, whether that's a condo or an apartment, I just mentioned it, you can jump over the lake to Bellevue. Bellevue is just 10 to 15 minutes over Lake Washington, and Bellevue is a downtown, very urban area, but it feels like a different world than Seattle and Portland do. It's a super clean area, very clean streets, and a wonderful place to live. A lot of people love living down there. There's a lot of businesses that have moved their business from downtown Seattle to downtown Bellevue because they feel like it's better for their business. So that's an option if you want urban living, and some of that stuff in Seattle and Portland kind of scares you away a little bit. Check out Bellevue. That could be a good option for you as well. All right, next point, let's look at the weather. Weather is going to be similar. When you are researching the Pacific Northwest, you know it rains a decent amount here. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, a little bit of a myth that I've talked about on a lot of my videos is it doesn't rain maybe as much as you would think in terms of annual rainfall. These two cities are not even in the top 10 or top 20 when it comes to total rainfall in any given year in the United States. A lot of cities like in Florida and other places down south have a lot more rain. We have a decent amount of rainy days because we get lighter, misty, drizzly rain. This is true for both Seattle and Portland, but let's take a look at some of the stats to compare the two areas. In terms of sunny days, on average, Portland gets 144 sunny days and Seattle gets 152. In terms of annual rainfall, Portland gets 42.8 inches a year, and Seattle gets 38 inches a year on average. When it comes to snowfall, Portland about 2.6 inches a year, and Seattle about 4.6 inches a year. So neither location you're getting much snow at all. This isn't the Northeast. Snow is not going to be an issue for 95% of the winter, but you're going to get a little bit in each location. Let's look at the average temperatures. So for the hottest times of the year and the coldest times of the year, they're going to be similar, but a little bit different. In Seattle, in July, you're going to average 78 degrees, and in August, you're going to average 79 degrees. In Portland, in July, you're going to average 82 degrees, and in August, 83 degrees. So pretty close. Portland, on average, a little bit warmer. In Seattle, in December, you're going to average 46 degrees for the high temperatures, and in January, 48 degrees. In Portland, on average, 45 degrees in December, 46 degrees in January for the highs. So they're pretty close. You're plus or minus a couple degrees here in each season, but they are pretty similar. All right, now let's talk about transportation. So a recent study was done looking at, hey, which cities in the United States have the worst commute times when you're talking about driving in your personal vehicle on the freeways and whatnot. Which cities have the worst commute times? Seattle came in at number 8 in the US at an average of 42 minutes per drive, per one way, I guess, is what they're talking about here. Portland came in at the 21st worst with about a 33-minute average drive. So according to their stats, about 9 minutes difference here. This is gonna depend so much on where you're working and where you're living. I know some people that commute 5 or 10 minutes to work, and I know some people that commute an hour and a half to work each way. It really just depends where you're ending up. So it's hard to take this stat too seriously into context, because it's just going to change so much for everybody, what your priorities are, what you're really looking for, where you're working, all that kind of stuff. But this is just a general idea to give you. Traffic in both locations is not great when you're commuting in your personal vehicle. Now, when it comes to public transportation, Portland certainly used to be superior to Seattle. They adopted a light rail train system quicker than we did over here. But in recent years, Seattle has really put in a lot of work in terms of getting their public transportation up to where it needs to be. They have the light rail station here in Seattle. Portland has the TriMet, so similar train systems. Both have city buses. Both are very biker friendly. Seattle has invested a lot into biker lanes in the downtown area and the surrounding neighborhoods in Seattle. We also have water taxis and ferries, of course, because we're right next to the Puget Sound, and streetcars in both locations. So options in both locations. Now, when you look at what the cities have been doing recently, in some respects, Portland has actually been stalling a little bit on furthering their development of the public transportation, while Seattle has been investing heavily. In fact, Seattle has invested more dollars per capita towards public transportation than any city in the US recently. So they're really trying to get on top of things and overcome this traffic issue in the Seattle area. The issue with Seattle is we're super landlocked. You can see we're between the Puget Sound and Lake Washington. So there's only so much you can do. There's only so many highways that you can put in. When you start to get out to the metro areas, it expands a little bit more, but we're still a bit landlocked. It's still a very narrow pathway, so there's not a ton of options. So they're investing really heavily in public transportation to help some of these issues. You know, I personally live on the north side of Seattle in a suburb, and if I'm going downtown for, say, a game at night, one of the sporting events or something like that, I will often take the train system because it's so much easier, extremely cheap to take, and it's a lot easier to get downtown without having to deal with parking, especially for these big events when they can charge $50, $60 for parking at one of the stadiums, jump on their light rail for $2 and go downtown. So this has, you know, affected my life a little bit, and a lot of people, it's really helped out. Same thing with going to the airport. No, it's never fun going to the airport, trying to park, paying for parking, which is extremely expensive. Jump on the light rail, it goes straight to the airport. So they're doing a much better job at implementing some more public transportation options. All right, let's talk about outdoor recreation. So we're in the Pacific Northwest. It's absolutely gorgeous up here. This is, you know, the Pacific Northwest might be one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful areas in the entire country. The great thing about Seattle is we have an advantage over Portland when it comes to water activities. We're on the Puget Sound for one, so you're not gonna get that in Portland. With being on the Puget Sound, we also have the islands. So you can take a ferry ride over the islands, or you can drive around if you want. There are a lot of great boating opportunities. I've been kayaking out there. You can see the wildlife, and it's just a beautiful area out there to take in. So for those of you that really enjoy maybe those water activities like a kayaking or a paddle boarding, or just experiencing some beautiful islands, that's a huge advantage to Seattle. On top of that, we have a lot of lakes in this area. I know the Portland area has some lakes as well. We've got a bit more here in the Seattle area, some really large lakes like Lake Washington. So on top of recreation, you have a lot of lakefront homes, if that's something that's important to you, with views. Boating, water skiing, tubing, again, kayaking, all that kind of stuff, swimming, parks all over the place to go swimming. There's so much water recreation in the Seattle area. It's absolutely hard to beat. You will have some options, like I mentioned, with some lakes in Portland, but you're not gonna be on the coast or have the Puget Sound, anything like that. Portland does have the Willamette River and the Columbia River flowing through it, so those are options as well. When it comes to the mountains, both areas are located, you know, on the west side of the Cascade Mountain Range, so you're gonna have a lot of hiking and mountain biking opportunities all over the place, whether you're in Seattle or Portland. When it comes to like skiing and snowboarding, you're gonna have more options in Seattle. Portland really is Mount Hood. There's a couple different ski resorts around Mount Hood, but that's really gonna be your one main location, whereas Seattle's really got about 4 locations that are within an hour, hour and a half driving distance, depending where in the metro area you're coming from. We've got Mount Baker on the north side, we've got Stevens Pass, we've got Snoqualmie Pass, and then we've got Crystal Mountain. So 4 different, distinct, completely different options when it comes to skiing, snowboarding, snowshoeing, tubing, all that kind of stuff in the mountain ranges. You're gonna have a lot of options. Another plus side of the Seattle area, across the Puget Sound on the peninsula, you have the mountain range as well, the Olympic Mountains over there. So having the mountains so close to the water provides some absolutely gorgeous and scenic views in a really, really cool environment. All right, let's talk about indoor activities. You know, when it comes to nightlife, nightclubs, I think Seattle and Portland are gonna be very similar. Seattle has probably a bit better music scene with, you know, guys like Jimi Hendrix and Pearl Jam, all these bands that have come out of Seattle over the years. Both areas are gonna be similar when it comes to nightclubs, when it comes to bars, when it comes to the music scene and things to do downtown like that. The nightlife, I don't think you're gonna experience a huge difference. They're kind of probably mid-tier nightlife. There's locations all over the US that are probably a lot better than Seattle and Portland. Probably mid-tier. There's certainly things you can do. It's not like nightlife is non-existent. It is there and can keep you entertained. Outside of nightlife, if that's not something you're interested in, professional sports are a big thing here in Seattle that Portland really lacks. Now, Portland does have the NBA. They have the Trailblazers. I'll give them that. Outside of that, they don't have anything. Seattle has the Seahawks.
Turn and handle Lynch left side. Finds a little bit of a hole, keeps his legs moving. He's across the 40, midfield. 45, he's on the run, Lynch. 40, pushes him at 35, look at him go. He's down to 20, 15, he could go. He is gonna go. Touchdown, Seahawks.
You know, our NFL team, we have the Sounders, our MLS team.
And now an opportunity with his foot to win MLS Cup for Seattle, which he has done. The Seattle Sounders have done it. MLS Cup winners in 2016.
We have the Mariners, our MLB team.
Oh, a drive deep to right field, down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1. The dream lives. They're going to the playoffs. The drought is over.
And then recently we just got a professional hockey team, the Seattle Kraken. So 4 major professional sports franchises, which for some people might not be a big deal. For other people, it is important because it's a lot of fun to go down and check out a game. You know, Seahawks games can be pretty expensive, but the other 3 are really very affordable. You can go to a Mariners game for 20 bucks. Same with Kraken and Sounders, you can go for 30 or 40 bucks. It's not that expensive. Like I said, you can take public transportation down, so you don't have to worry about parking down there. And it's really cool to go with the family, or go with your buddies, or go with your girlfriends, or whatever the case is, go with your friends, to have a night taking in you know, a sporting event in this area. It is very enjoyable to do that. People in Seattle are extremely passionate about their sports franchises, so keep that in mind. Gonna have to adopt the fandom when you come over here. All right, and the last category I'm gonna talk about here are the job opportunities. You probably know Seattle's gonna have far better job opportunities. We talked about the median household incomes, Seattle of 105,000, Portland of 78,000. That's because there are so many job opportunities in Seattle that you don't get in Portland. Seattle's a tech hub. It's right up there with San Francisco. We've got Amazon headquarters here. We've got Microsoft headquarters here. We've got Google offices. We've got GoDaddy offices. We've got Facebook offices, Hulu, and a bunch of other smaller tech companies. Outside of tech, tech isn't the only thing that runs this area. There's a lot of great healthcare jobs. We have a lot of great hospitals around here. There are people that come from all over really the West Coast and some of the nearing states that come here for their treatment, especially for cancer care and things like that. So it draws a lot of people into these great hospitals and a lot of healthcare jobs that come along with that. We're also on the Puget Sound, like I mentioned, so there's a lot of maritime jobs, if that's something you're into. There's engineering jobs, there's finance jobs. Like I mentioned, Bellevue, there's a lot of money in Bellevue. There's finance jobs. So keep that in mind. Portland has some options. You know, they've got Nike headquarters there, but there just is not the robust job market in Portland that there is in Seattle. It's hard for them to compete with what we have in this area, which is why a lot of people end up in Seattle, is because they get a high paying job. So that difference in home price doesn't really matter because they're making a lot more money in Seattle than they would be in Portland. Now, another thing to talk about here a little bit is the diversity in both locations. You'll hear that Seattle is probably a bit more diverse than Portland, and a big reason for this is this job market. There's a lot of people that move here from out of state, even out of country, to take especially these tech jobs. So it provides a bit more diversity maybe here in the Seattle area than in Portland. All right, well, these are the main categories that you should really consider when you're weighing these two options. Now, they often refer to Portland as Seattle's weird little brother. They even have a sign in Portland that says, "Keep Portland weird." So it's kind of a miniature version of Seattle with not all of the perks and bonuses. Yes, you're gonna have more affordable home prices. Outside of that, a lot of what is offered in Seattle, you can get better job opportunities, a bit more when it comes to recreational opportunities, both outdoor and indoor. And it's, you know, they're both friendly environments from what I've experienced. You've heard the term Seattle freeze, which certainly can be a thing downtown in Seattle. When you get into the metro areas, I've helped a lot of clients move over here to the Seattle metropolitan area, and I've absolutely loved this area and found community and whatnot. So you're gonna have some of that in both areas, whether that's a bit of snarkiness maybe downtown, and then it opens up as you expand further and you can really find community. Not to say you can't make friends downtown. A lot of people do, and they absolutely love living down there in both areas. They're both walkable, like I said. So there's still a bunch of friendly people in these areas. So don't let that scare you away from either Portland or Seattle. All right, well, hopefully this was helpful for you. Like I said, I'm an active real estate agent here in the Seattle area. So if you're moving over here looking to purchase a home, whether it's in Seattle or the greater metropolitan area, feel free to reach out to me. Be happy to help you with that process. Thanks for watching this one.